Thanks for joining us. I'm Megan Roberts. We begin tonight with the latest on the wildfires in the Northwest Territories. Right now, 217 fires are burning across all regions of the territory. Much of the landscape is hot and dry, and there are thunderstorms on the horizon, which combine to create potentially dangerous conditions. Let's start with the latest on the fire threatening Wrigley. The fire has not moved closer to the community. It remains 5 kilometers away. NWT Fire says most of that fire's growth has been on the east into the mountain range. Smoke has been hampering efforts from the air, but crews are making progress on the ground. They're focusing on the south side of the fire and working on protecting structures and homes in Wrigley. Crews are also using what's called a high-volume suppression system. That's what you're looking at here right now on your screen. That's on the northern edge of the community. Now let's take a look at some of the other fires we're keeping an eye on. A fire 28 kilometers north of Betchacon is now 15,000 hectares. It's recently grown due to dry, windy weather. Crews are working on protecting structures in the area, but there's no immediate threat to that community right now. There are 2 fires burning 35 kilometers west of Gamati. NWT Fire says they're quickly growing because of quickly because of extreme fire weather. Thick smoke is causing problems for firefighters right now, though no threats to the community. And finally, there's a fire 35 kilometers southwest of Fort Resolution. That community not at risk, but it may see smoke from the fire. 3 crews and 1 helicopter are working on that fire. NWT Fire is also closely monitoring wildfires burning near a historic uranium site in the Sawtooth region. The Great Bear Remediation Project is on the eastern shore of Great Bear Lake. It includes 4 abandoned mine sites that are in the process of being cleaned up. Northern Affairs Canada confirmed earlier this week that a fire had burned near one of the camps called Sawmill Bay, but no structures were affected. A researcher says it's still unclear what the outcome would be if radioactive particles, also known as radionuclides, were to interact with the fire.
We would expect that the movement and levels of radionuclides in an environment will change and will depend on factors such as what radionuclides were there before, the forest type, the severity of the fire, like you mentioned, and the local environment conditions. But what we don't know yet, and what is one of our primary research goals, is how much movement occurs, how these radionuclides are enriched, and which radionuclides are predominantly affected, and then which ecosystems will be more susceptible. So those are kind of the questions that we're working on.
Walsh says she hopes this work will help protect land and water and the people that rely on them. Results of a study are expected this time next year. Fort Simpson residents are officially settling back in. It's been nearly a month since an evacuation order was issued for the town due to an encroaching wildfire. Jocelyn Chappelle is in Fort Simpson. Here's a preview of what she's working on for tomorrow.
I'm here in Fort Simpson speaking to residents since they've returned to the community, as well as to those that stayed through some of the most severe moments of the wildfire that threatened the area. It's a little bit less smoky out here today, and many firefighters are still camping out behind me. Wildfire crews are still at work, and people are coming to terms with the aftermath. I'll have more on the experiences of the people who live here and what cleanup and support is looking like tomorrow on the show.
What kind of future are we trying to secure? That question came up at the Inuit Circumpolar Council General Assembly in Iqaluit, and it's at the center of discussions today. It's the second day of the gathering, which welcomed Inuit from across the circumpolar region. Delegates spoke about Indigenous peoples' rights and peace, security, and cooperation. CBC senior reporter Juanita Taylor is in Iqaluit covering the assembly. So, Juanita, tell us what you've been hearing.
Well, Megan, what we are hearing is that the issues facing all the Arctic regions, including the environment, protecting Inuit culture and language, Inuit way of life, marine and migratory species, and the food even that Inuit rely on, they're adding to Arctic security and advocating for sovereignty. And that's concerning to the delegates here from Galatlit Nunat, Alaska, Canada, and Chukotka in Russia. But Megan, they are also talking about how united they are together. And we saw that quite evidently when the United States president threatened to annex Greenland. Now, the show of solidarity from all the countries gathered here today, that was a time in history that we saw back then. Now, each country, they are saying that they feel as one, advocating for the same rights and protections as one voice on the international stage.
And Juanita, who were the presenters today at the Assembly?
Well, Megan, there were a number of presenters today. Keynote speakers included the Arctic Ambassador of the Kingdom of Denmark and the United Nations Special Rapporteur on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples. Natan Obed, the president of Inuit Teparik Kanatmi, he also sits as an ICC Executive Council member. He also made a presentation today. And one point he made, Megan, was on the security of Inuit, particularly when it comes to Inuit identity fraud. People wanting to be Inuit to access programs meant only for Inuit for their own gain, to benefit from programs and services. Obed calling identity fraud as a new form of colonization.
In the past 40 years in Canada, there have been now new incentives to claim indigeneity, either as an individual, as a group of people trying to form a fraudulent collective, or within industry and in governments. Therefore, Indigenous identity fraud is a new form of colonization, where individuals or fraudulent collectives try to divert resources from Indigenous peoples to themselves, or try to take over Inuit lands and political place. We have to respond to this growing tool of colonization by being vigilant to protect our definitions of who belongs in our collective.
Now, Megan, Obed didn't say specifically who or which groups are involved in Inuit identity fraud, but he did say that this is a very delicate matter. Now, Megan, tomorrow some of the topics being discussed here are Inuit hunting and food security and the protection of Inuit lands, waters, species, and ice, again, by a number of speakers. Megan?
Okay, thank you, Juanita. That's CBC senior reporter Juanita Taylor. Inuit youth are sharing their vision for the kind of future they want to see at the ICC General Assembly. They say it's one that makes sure there's access to mental health services to avoid losing more young people. Gwen Nutzig spoke as the youth delegate representing Canada on Wednesday. She says young people in many northern communities face barriers accessing care. That includes things like long wait times and a lack of local resources.
For most of us, this issue is deeply personal. In the past 5 years alone, I have lost around 8 people to suicide. This is a level of loss that many people living in the south of Canada may never experience in their lifetime. Yet for many Inuit youth, it has become a heartbreaking reality.
Youth raised other concerns like the need for more action on language revitalization and housing. Sarah Olsvy, the outgoing chair of the ICC, says the organization will consider the concerns youth brought forward during the assembly this week. If you or someone you know is struggling, there's help. You can call the Kamatsiaktut Nunavut helpline at 1-867-979-3333 or toll free at 1-800-265-3333. You can also call the Suicide Crisis Helpline by dialing 988. Both of those lines are available 24/7. Nunavut Dungavik Incorporated President Glory Uluksi addressed ICC delegates this morning about peace, security, and cooperation among Inuit and across circumpolar regions. It comes at a time when world powers eye the Arctic for natural resources and shipping traffic increases. Uluksi spoke about unification and what security truly means for Inuit and the next generation.
What kind of future are we trying to secure? Because the answer to that question changes everything. When many people look at the Arctic, they see a map. They see shipping routes. They see minerals. They see military interests. They see strategic competition. Inuit see something very different. We see home. We see places where our grandparents taught us who we were, who we are. We see the lands and waters that continue to feed our families. We see communities where our children are growing up. And we see a responsibility to leave this homeland stronger than we found it. That is the Inuit understanding of security. Security is not only about protecting a place. It's about preparing a people. For Inuit, security begins long before a ship enters our waters and an aircraft flies over our skies. Security begins when a child grows up knowing they belong. When they hear their language every day, when they learn from their elders, when families have safe homes, when hunters can continue traveling safely on the land, when communities have opportunities to thrive, when young people believe they can build a future without leaving behind who they are. That is security. Strong communities create a secure Arctic. Today, the world is paying more attention to our homelands than any other time in our lives. Governments are investing, researchers are studying, businesses are looking north. That attention brings opportunity. It also brings responsibility. The world needs Inuit leadership. But perhaps even more importantly, our children need it. That is why I believe this moment is so important. We cannot choose the moment that history gives us, but we can choose what history says about us. Will history remember us as the generation that simply reacted to change? Or will it remember us as the generation that had the confidence to shape it? I know what I hope our grandchildren will say, that when the world turned its attention to the Arctic, Inuit turned our attention to one another. We chose cooperation over division, responsibility over complacency, hope over fear. We chose to build stronger communities. We chose to prepare the next generation, and we chose to lead together, because every generation of Inuit inherits a responsibility. This one belongs to us. Matna.
Luxi is also calling on the federal government to expand Inuit mobility rights so Inuit from other circumpolar countries can live and move freely in Canada. Prime Minister Mark Carney joined the premiers on their last day of their meeting in Charlottetown, where Donald Trump's latest tariff threats had dominated the discussions. Despite clear differences in how the various premiers want to respond to the U.S., Carney insisted they stand united. Kate McKenna has more.
Prime Minister Mark Carney says Canada will do whatever it takes to counter Donald Trump's new tariff threat.
Everything's on the table if there's no agreement, depending on the outcome of the negotiations, yes.
Premiers and the Prime Minister met in Charlottetown, a long-planned meeting made more urgent by the White House's new 30-day deadline before a new slate of punishing tariffs.
Do you think that this is a meaningful opportunity to approach some sort of endgame with the United States, or is it just another pressure tactic from the Trump administration?
It's both. I mean, that's the direct answer.
But Carney wouldn't say exactly what Canada may be planning.
We don't need to respond in advance. In fact, I think it would be counterproductive at this stage to respond in advance. But it's important to know what your options are.
Over 3 days of meetings, premiers were clear they want all tariffs gone.
Trump's tariffs are dumb and they make life more expensive for Americans.
But premiers like Doug Ford want retaliation, while others want more negotiation. The chair of the meetings, PEI's premier, says they leave his province united.
We've demonstrated that while provinces and territories may approach issues, may not always approach issues in the same way. We sometimes have different priorities or even competing interests. We share a commitment to finding solutions and delivering results.
The Prime Minister and the premiers also talked about making Canada's economy stronger, in part so it's less reliant on the United States. Kate McKenna, CBC News, Charlottetown.
Nunavut Liberal MP Lori Idlout says she's been a target of a disinformation campaign over her part in a company that's received federal money. Idlout faced criticism after she put her stake in Ottawa-based consulting firm Envision in a trust. Over the years, the firm received hundreds of thousands of dollars in contracts from the federal government. Idlout believes the criticisms are part of a political campaign against her.
It's unfortunate that the Conservatives are playing games. It's unfortunate that the Conservatives are spreading disinformation.
Idlout says she removed herself as director of Envision as soon as she got elected in 2021. Since then, she says she hasn't earned anything from the firm. In a statement to CBC News, Conservative MP Bob Zimmer says Idlout is mixing public office with personal financial interest. He says it took sustained public and media scrutiny for her to place her stake in a trust. The federal government is investing tens of millions of dollars into community infrastructure in Nunavut, but it's not clear how that money will be distributed. 6 federal and territorial ministers were in Iqaluit today to make the announcement. $81 million will go towards housing, post-secondary education, and health care in the territory. It'll also receive $74 million in health infrastructure over 3 years. But among the officials in attendance, none of them could say exactly where that money would go.
We still have to go through the capital planning process in order to decide where that funding will actually be allocated. So that information will come at a later date.
This funding is part of a bigger $51 billion federal fund to support community infrastructure across Canada. The Yukon is waiting on a decision by the federal government about whether it will be allowed to increase its borrowing limit. The territory is closing in on its debt cap, and it wants the feds to more than double it from $1.2 billion to $3 billion. To date, territorial governments have never gone over their federally imposed debt limits. Dana Hatherley reports.
Earlier this year, CBC obtained emails between territorial and federal representatives. One from a Yukon official says the territory will be, quote, at or near zero by January if historic patterns occur. Premier and Finance Minister Curry Dixon says the federal government wants to see a debt management plan.
We're happy to provide that because we feel the same way. We want to make sure that we're not taking on debt irresponsibly. Our feeling has been that the previous government was fairly loose with how they took on debt, and we need to be more rigorous and thoughtful about how we take on new debt.
Economist Keith Halliday says any newly elected government would have had to confront the debt limit and how to pay for big-ticket items in energy and health. Halliday predicts the onus will soon be on the Premier.
The borrowing limit is, it's not a suggestion from the federal government. It's a rule. So, I think any premier would take that rule very seriously. I don't think my personal view is and I'm not privy to the negotiations. I don't think the federal government is going to say no. They, I think, don't have an interest in having the Yukon government hit the end of its limit like a husky hitting the end of its chain.
S&P Global Ratings recently reported on the territory's ability to pay back its debt. An analyst says an increase in the borrowing limit wouldn't have changed its assessment.
With respect to its budgetary performance, it's kind of in the middle. It's a bit weaker than what we see at the municipal level and stronger than what we see at the provincial level. And because its responsibilities are more aligned with provinces, you could say that provinces are probably a better peer. We expect the territory to generate modest operating revenues and moderate after capital balances. On the debt side, their debt is very low compared to their provincial peers.
The decision to raise the debt limit lies with the federal finance minister. A federal spokesperson says the feds are expediting the request but didn't give a timeline. Meanwhile, Dixon says he will consider resigning if his government goes over the borrowing limit. Dana Hatherley, CBC News, Whitehorse.
A long-shuttered mine south of Whitehorse is getting renewed attention. An exploration company is drilling there and wants to expand its work. Gabrielle Plonka has that story.
There used to be an underground mine at the end of this road. It produced gold for just a couple of years before closing its doors at the end of the 1980s. The site has changed several times since then. Now a new company is renewing exploration in the area. Vancouver-based exploration company Blue Jay Gold bought the project last fall. It presented plans to nearby residents at a recent local advisory council meeting, which said residents have been affected by mining in the area and are wary of new activity.
Could have an impact, as Al pointed out. The road traffic, the potential pollution. There's lots of different things. Helicopters flying in and out, all those things, which have an impact on wildlife.
A chief concern from residents: heavy metals like arsenic leaching into the environment. The exploration company's CEO says he is listening to resident concerns, and his company is committed to proper remediation while exploring the area.
It's really a mixture of, undertaking, modern exploration in a measured approach, and also characterising what was done before. There's such a wealth of information there that we can use, so we don't have to go back in and drill a lot of holes that were around existing workings.
Blue Jay Gold is planning to drill 16,000 meters this summer. It's also going to build 2 bridges and apply for a 10-year license to expand drilling. It's applying to upgrade its Class 4 license to a Class 3. That's just to expand its exploration work. The company is not planning to actually build a mine anytime soon. Gabrielle Plonka, CBC News, Whitehorse.
Nunavut sealskin products dating back to 1999 will be showcased to people from across the circumpolar world. They're on display at Ampere Iqaluit Makerspace during the Inuit Circumpolar Council General Assembly in Iqaluit. It's welcoming anyone who wants to see sealskin garments made by Nunavut seamstresses. The communications director with Ampere Canada says it decided to do the pop-up sealskin display to put the A in STEAM. That's science, technology, engineering, art, and math.
Seal checks all those boxes, right? Seal garments are technology. Seal garments are fantastic engineering and overall art. They are the A. So we're going to show off some Nunavut artists and sort of point out that, sealskin garments are fantastic science.
Driscoll says he wants to show other Inuit from the circumpolar world how Inuit from Nunavut use sealskin. The pop-up exhibit will run from 3 to 6 p.m. until Friday at the Ampere office upstairs. And that is Northbeat for tonight. For news anytime, go to cbc.ca/north. Thank you for watching. We leave you tonight with a Greenlandic drum dance and a Kalawit that was part of the Inuit Circumpolar Council General Assembly. I'm Megan Roberts. Have a good night.